you're right. It was a rough season, and that doesn't always harbor a lot of attention from recruits, especially those that are closing in on making a decision. Coming into January, I wrote an article about how I think Georgia Tech had 12 commitments at the time. They've got room for about 18 or 19 in this class, so just because they're not approaching the 25 number doesn't necessarily mean it's a problem or that they're doing something wrong. But they had 12, so they had to add 6 or 7 here in January. Had a lot of work to do, really, but there was potential there. There are some top guys that they're looking at, and so they just had their first big visit weekend. Got a commitment from Jay Jones, who's the number 3 athlete in the state of Alabama. He's a quarterback, but could also play, one of the slot back positions or a defensive back position. Just depends on kind of how that shakes out. I think the one guy that is getting maybe the most attention from Georgia Tech fans right now, it's kind of got an interesting story going along with him, is Jordan Woods. He's a defensive end from Florida, and so he was on campus for a visit this past weekend. Prior to that visit, a day or two before, there was a video interview with him, I think that Scout released, where they were talking with him, and they asked him, do you have any leader on your schools? And he basically said, well, I've already committed to a school. He had told the coaches that he was coming, and then he was going to wait until Monday of this week, so wait a few days through the weekend, and then he was going to post like a video announcing his commitment. And the thought was that was not going to be Georgia Tech. The thought was that was going to be Tennessee. And so, but he ended up coming on the visit to Georgia Tech anyways. And as it turns out, through the weekend, I guess he was really impressed by what he saw. His parents were really impressed by what they saw. And not to mention that Tennessee had a little bit of a hiccup themselves of cutting a commit that had been, committed for several months. They pulled his offer for no apparent reason. And so I think we still have not seen a commitment from Woods, and so I think it may have changed things up for him a little bit. He's a 4-star defensive end and would be a really big get for Georgia Tech. And I think within just less than a week, they've gone from effectively dead in the water to maybe in the driver's seat for getting his commitment. So that's a situation that a lot of folks are keeping an eye on and something to be aware of moving forward. The other big one moving forward is going to be Donavaughn Campbell. So he's a 4-star offensive lineman from Louisiana, about a little bit east of Baton Rouge, but he's been committed to LSU for several months now. And the only reason that Georgia Tech really has an in with this kid, I think, is that his older brother, Christian Campbell, plays quarterback at Georgia Tech. He just finished a redshirt season, and there are some that kind of think that he might be the heir apparent to Justin Thomas once he graduates after 2016. Well, Donavaughn has interest in maybe playing with his brother, and he likes Atlanta and a lot about the program, and so if they were to flip a commitment from LSU from right out of LSU's backyard, not only would he be the highest rated prospect that Coach Johnson has signed under his tenure at Georgia Tech, but that would be, I think, the recruiting coup of the decade for the Jackets. You don't go into Louisiana and get players that LSU wants just at the drop of a hat. So that's another name. I think that one's going to come down to signing day or shortly before. He just took an official visit to LSU this past weekend, and then had an in-home visit with Les Miles earlier this week. But he is due to officially visit Georgia Tech here at the end of the month, the final weekend before signing day, which I think is something else that can't be understated. So just another guy there to keep an eye on. He would be a huge win for the Jackets moving forward.